Hi everybody, welcome aboard to this podcast, and it's the first of the kind where we shall be pulling out issues that are affecting the community, and we shall come to talk about them with an agenda of finding possible solutions and how we can address them as the entire community from national to the international level. And today we are discussing something that is very critical to do with gender equality. We know that despite all the possible solutions that the government has come up with, different development partners from the UN agencies, different government stakeholders, we are still seeing a disparities in issues of gender equality. So with efforts from the civil society organization, different government agencies and development partners, there is still a gap that we need to address. And joining me today is my colleague that will be introducing themselves later on as we move on. Derek Okothi is my name from Nakuru Teenage Center. Yes, Linda, you can introduce yourself for people that do not know.
Hi everyone, my name is Linda Tulina. I work with Nakuru Teenage Center. Today, alongside my colleague Derek, we shall be having a discussion on gender inequality, in line with the national theme or the international theme for this year's Women's Day, which is celebrated every 8th of March every year annually. The discussion is still going to rotate around gender inequality, both at national, community level, maybe even family.
So thank you so much, Linda. Maybe for purposes of our audience, Linda is a person that mainly does a lot of work in behavior change and communication. So she's an expert that will be sharing into details on this topic. And without wasting time, I want us to dive into it. When we talk of gender inequality, what comes to you as a woman with the work that you've been doing in the different regions of the country, but also at national level? What's the gap that you will see when someone talks about gender inequality?
Thank you, Derek. Gender inequality, we basically look at the social injustices, the imbalances in service provision, in opportunities, in everything. Basically looking at both sexes, male, female, unfairness in availing opportunities. For example, women may be denied some opportunities, whereas men are given opportunities simply because they are men. So that is what gender inequality basically looks at, and it can manifest in so many ways. Education opportunities. We still have communities where girl children are denied education simply because they are girls, whereas the boys are given an opportunity to go to school for as long as they want to because they are men. It can also manifest at our workplaces where a woman may be denied a certain opportunity. Two able-bodied people, maybe at the same level, a male and female. A female may be denied an opportunity because she's female, whereas she could be in position to perform even better than the male. So we see inequalities in all spheres of life. Yeah.
What you say that we're seeing it both in the public sector but also the private sector, whereby women are underlooked, especially when it comes to superior positions. But when speaking of gender inequality, there is a concept of gender-based violence that is in there, shielding everything. So you find that when you talk of gender-based violence, we agree that men could also fall victim, but the discrepancy is so wide if you compare it with the counterparts who are the female. So we are seeing that females are being at a higher risk, or the prevalence is high to the female despite their counterparts, the male. What do you think are some of the gaps which are the different agencies that are trying to see that the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal Agenda 2030 that speaks of gender equality for all, it could be achieved looking at things like female genital mutilation, child marriages, and all other aspects of gender-based violence?
Well, we see a gap in, for example, around GBV, we see one survivors are denied access to safe spaces, to treatment, to maybe safe spaces where they can actually just talk about what is happening. We also see gaps in implementing policies, especially around GBV. At what point do we give this survivor opportunity to report, for example? Does she even know where she needs to report, if she needs to report? Does she know where he or she needs to access the service? Do they know all the entire package of services that are entailed in there? Right from seeking justice, seeking medical, it could be counseling, just talk about what is happening. So we look at all these gaps. But the biggest gaps are around policies, that we have policies in place, but then enacting the policies is still a challenge.
Yeah. So Linda, when you're speaking, I had a lot of gaps in policies, implementation, when it comes to medical attention. So in commemoration of the International Women's Day, this year's theme is accelerating progress for gender equality. So when you hear of that theme, where do you think the acceleration is needed when it comes to those gaps that you're talking?
Okay. Well, gender inequality is not something that has just come up now. It's a discussion that has been everywhere for a very long time. So when we talk about acceleration, we are basically looking at going beyond the conversations. There's a lot of talk that has been done, but how do we go beyond the conversations and enact? Maybe we have policies that are on people's shelves. How do we enact the policies? How do we empower communities? How do we empower communities? How do we empower children right from grassroots level for them to be able to see when inequalities are in place and maybe seek help where they need to?
Okay, so when it comes to implementation of laws, when you know that in the community, especially in the rural setting, I believe me and you have been privileged to work in those different communities in the rural areas. And when it comes to implementation of these policies, most people leave it for government. So I want you to just help us shine a light the role of the different agencies when it comes to the community level, personal level, how we can jointly see that these policies are put into implementation for this acceleration to be achieved, because it's only 5 years from 2030. So what acceleration do the people at their different capacities need to know?
Okay, so at government level, one, we are looking at government strengthening the already existing policies and maybe enacting them. Then at grassroots level, we are looking at communities empowering both boys and girls to seek help, but also stand up to cultural norms, for example, or religious norms that may be fueling the gender inequality in place. How do they come up and challenge some of these norms without necessarily challenging the culture as a whole, but those specific ones that are fueling the gender inequality? Then for development partners, because we all have a role to play, how do we root for maybe more funding in programs or projects that are focusing on gender inequality? How are we building capacity of small organizations? They could be CBOs at grassroots level. How are we building their capacities to come up and stand against all these inequalities that we have?
Yeah, so Linda, we believe that economic empowerment is a game changer. At least we have seen it, we have witnessed it. We know and appreciate that when women have a given degree or magnitude of financial independence, they are able to make some decisions that are mainly going to improve their health. They are able to have a sound mind to go for a decision that they know is going to help them, unlike if they were so vulnerable whereby they have to rely on a man. So what do you want? What do you have to talk about when it comes to accelerating economic empowerment for women?
Okay. Economic empowerment, one, it gives the girls and women a bit of financial independence, whereby you're not going to wait for your husband or boyfriend every other month to buy you pads, for example, to buy you knickers. There's a bit of independence where at least you can afford, or you can afford the basics in life. Then it also gives them a leverage in decision making. If you're at home, for example, and it's only my husband providing financially, that means he has the leeway to make all decisions in the home. But if the two of us are contributing, we can ably sit together as husband and wife and negotiate on certain things. Where to invest the money, which schools the children will go to. All these are very important decisions. So if a woman is able to contribute in decision making, she, in a way, her rights are not being violated, or she's not being suppressed because she's a woman.
Yeah, so Linda, do you have any last words to our viewers there? Any word to the young people who have listened into this podcast that we have shot mainly for the celebration of the International Women's Day this year, 2025?
So I want to thank and maybe appreciate Nabu Teenage Center for the different efforts it has put in to ensure that girls are being given opportunities that are elevating them at the same pace. They're having projects where girls are being skilled, which in a way empowers them financially, and then in those particular groups they're able to access small funds that are able to elevate them even further. Funds like PDM, which we know is easy to access as a group. So my parting shots, one would be that each and every one of us has a role to play in fighting the social injustices around gender inequality. So be it government, be it CSOs, we all have a role to play. For government, we call upon you to enact the laws or the policies that are already in place. CSOs, we can advocate for funding in areas where we know gender inequality is really an issue. Then for the young people out there at grassroots level, one, your biggest role maybe would be pointing out some of those social norms that you think are limiting you as a young girl. Norms that, for example, are limiting you to access school, limiting you to access work. You point out these social norms, the negative ones, and also maybe challenge them through the different platforms you have. They could be community dialogues, they could be radio, talk shows, whichever platform you can get. We are able to challenge all these norms, but each and every one of us has a role to play in fighting this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda, for joining us today for this conversation. And to our esteemed viewers, we really appreciate. Thank you so much for listening in. Like I said earlier, this is the first of a kind. Let's continue the conversation. I believe, like Linda said, we shouldn't stop this only on theme days like the International Women's Day. So let's keep the momentum going on. As you in the community, what are you doing to accelerate the impact for gender equality? Just go to our different social media platforms and tell us what are you doing to accelerate the impact for gender equality. Thank you so much for listening in, and we are really looking forward to have you on our upcoming podcast.